All right, welcome to the Gaming Lounge Podcast, episode 26. Once again, I'm your host, Sebastian, and I'm joined by Dory. How's everything going, Dory?
Great. I am enamored with Visions of Mana right now. There is a bear called Dud Bears, and they have their whole language. Like, they have an entire language built into the game. It's terrific. Like, dubba dudda dubba dub means you, me, friends, yes. It's just terrific. So I that's what I'm currently in love with. Also, it's spooky month, so I'm living, and it's Kim and I's anniversary in a little over a week. So it's a good time to be me. But yeah, I'm excited. This will be a shorter episode. We're just going to talk about some spooky games and what we've been playing, and that'll be about it.
Yep. So every episode of this month is going to be Halloween focused, horror based. So today we're going to focus on top 5 horror games that we recommend everybody plays. So today is going to be about the big hitters. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be familiar with the names mentioned today. I want to focus on like underrated games, another topic in another episode. Before we get into that, I want to talk about what's coming up this month. First of all, Silent Hill 2 comes out this week. I got
great reviews.
I got the deluxe version, so I can play it midnight tonight. It comes out tomorrow if you have the deluxe. Otherwise, it comes out the 8th. And then Dragon Ball Sparking Zero comes out this week as well. At the end of the week, I believe. Also, I got the deluxe, so I can play that 2 days earlier as well. And then Metaphor is right around the corner as well. So this month is very stacked for sure. And of course, I've been playing Until Dawn, which I'll talk about. Which it's been very mixed reaction to that game, for sure, especially on Steam. But so let's talk about our top 5 games, horror games to recommend to people for the Halloween season. So this is our first time doing this for this podcast, but we've been doing podcasts for the last 4 years. So
yeah,
we've always done special stuff for Halloween. Halloween's one of our favorite times of the year. It's my favorite time of the year, personally.
it's pretty much my favorite time of the year. I can't really think of anything that's as good.
Yeah, I love Christmas as well, but Halloween's my favorite time of the year. I've been watching horror movies and playing horror games and stuff like that. And I really love this time of the year. I have my students doing Halloween stuff. I decorate. I really like Halloween. It's my favorite. And now I always play horror games during this month. It's my go-to thing. And I know Dory does movie marathons.
Yes.
I don't do I don't watch. I feel like I don't watch a lot of horror movies in October. I watch a few of them, like the ones I plan on watching. Gaming's where I focus, like October. Like that's my spooky month. But these are the 5 games I wanted to recommend to everybody that they should play for Halloween. I think these are like a lot of these games are going to be like essential, like the must-play games for horror fans. And the first game I want to mention, I was going to say Silent Hill 2, but since the remake comes out this week and everybody pretty much knows about it at this point, I want to shift focus to Silent Hill 3. Silent Hill 2 is the best one, I think. I think it's the most classic, it's the most well-known and everything. But Silent Hill 3 is the most scariest, I feel like, of the Silent Hill franchise. Like, it has genuine scares. It has awesome visuals. It has a great character in Heather. She's very iconic, I would say. She's one of the best female protagonists. That game desperately needs a remake or a remaster. I don't recommend playing the remastered version of 360 because they changed the voice acting. Not that the voice actress does bad, but it's not as good as the original. So if you're gonna play the Silent Hill 3, I'd play an emulated version of it. But Silent Hill 3 is a fantastic game. It's a genuinely scary horror game. It's one of the must-play horror games for sure. And you'll really, but I think the best part of that game is Heather. I think you'll really fall in love with her. I think she's a fantastic character. She's well developed. Her story ties into the first game, so it's a direct sequel to the first game. While Silent Hill 2 is its own thing, and it really does a great job developing that story with the only thing I wish they did better was show her relationship with Harry, her father, more, who adopted her and everything. Or
Right.
basically she got reincarnated. Like basically she got Alyssa. I think it was Alyssa. She got reincarnated into another baby, and Harry raises her. And and her real name is Cheryl, but she's like pretty much in witness protection because the cult's trying to get her to give birth to God, which is like a demon that would,
Right, as you do.
yeah, as you do. And so that's the plot of Silent Hill 3. And I think it's a fantastic game, and I really recommend everybody plays it. So, yeah, Silent Hill 3, one of the best, most underrated. I don't know if it's underrated anymore. I don't know. People talk about it a lot, but it's definitely one of the best horror games. Dory, what's another horror game that you would recommend people play?
Yeah, so the first one I want to recommend is it's really good and it's short and it's incredibly scary. One of the scariest horror games I would say of all time. Going on with the Silent Hill theme, it's PT. Probably one of the scariest games I've ever played, and it's not that long. I would say maybe PT is like an hour, and if you're like trying to do all the secrets, maybe a couple hours or something.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, I would strongly recommend everybody try to play it. I know it's a little harder to play now because they've delisted it, but I'm sure there are ways for you to find it online. Or if you really can't find it, watch people play it on YouTube back when it first came out, or back when people still had those downloaded copies on their PS4 or whatever it was. Was it PS4 or PS3? I think it was PS4.
4.
4, yeah. Just one of the scariest games of all time. It's very simple. I mean, you're just walking through a hallway over and over and over again, but the little touches every now and then, the claustrophobia, the atmosphere, the story that's kind of teased out through the environment, the little like the only couple of jump scares that are there are done very, very well. At the time, I knew nothing about Silent Hill, and I mean, I still don't know a lot. Although I will know more once I play Silent Hill 2. But I knew enough to know that it was a very influential horror series, and I was very excited to play PT. I don't remember if I already knew that it wasn't going to happen at that point or not, but I loved it. Scared the heck out of me. Of course, I played it at night. I don't remember if I played it with headphones or not, but I had a great time with it, and still one of the biggest disappointments for me is that PT will never happen. I can't really ever realistically say seeing it happen.
Yeah.
Maybe Kojima does some kind of spiritual successor to it through his own studio with Del Toro, but I can't. PT, as it was originally conceived of through Konami, will never happen. Which, I mean, based on how much you like or dislike Konami, could be a good thing. But yeah,
that was the most disappointing moment ever. I feel like of a game that like was coming out and got canceled. Like that's the most disappointing canceled game of all time. PT is a fantastic demo, and it's very and so influential. That demo was so good that it inspired like most horror studios to make first person like stealth games, and like it for like a whole generation, horror games mirrored PT. It was that influential. Like Resident Evil 7, for example.
That's where you got Incantation, or I forget whatever that Red Candle game was. But where I forget what was it called, Incantation or something, Incarnation.
Yeah,
they made a game called Detention, and then they also made another game, Devotion. That's what it was called. But of course, that eventually got pulled because of mocking the Chinese Communist Party. Yeah, just kind of wild sequence of events from PT to that kind of game. Yeah, PT was huge. It inspired a wave of kind of games that did very similar things through atmosphere and environmental horror. I mean, stuff Silent Hill had always done, but PT was going to be the new generation of that. And it's very sad we never got it. I hope Kojima eventually does some kind of spiritual successor with Del Toro now that he has his own studio. Maybe he will. It seems like he's got a couple new projects besides Death Stranding 2 under his belt. So we'll see what he does with it. But I would love some kind of PT spiritual successor. Even if we never get PT itself, at least we can get that. And we always still have the demo too. Again, one of the scariest games I've ever played. A lot of these games from here on out are either going to be remakes or like games that are just like masterful in terms of like how good they are, but they are also like horror games and they happen to be scary. But I wanted to include PT because it is like the scariest game I've probably ever played. I think it's definitely up there. And so if I didn't include this, I would have definitely felt remiss.
Yeah. All right. So another game I would recommend people play for October is Resident Evil Remake, the very first remake on the GameCube, which is now remastered on modern consoles and PC. That's the version I would play it on because they gave you the option of using modern controls, even though there's fixed camera angles still. You don't have to use tank controls. Resident Evil Remake is is arguably the greatest survival horror game ever made. Silent Hill 2 beats it for me, but Resident Evil Remake would be second. And Resident Evil Remake is a must-play game for sure if you're into horror. Like, first of all, it's one of the scariest games ever made. The mansion setting is very unsettling. You never know what's creeping around the hallways. You never know what's behind the door. Resident Evil was already a classic. It was one of the greatest games ever made, and this remake somehow made it even better. Like, it's the definitive version of Resident Evil 1 now. I don't really think of the original as much anymore because the remake kind of replaces it in the canon for me. It's that good. It adds on like Lisa Trevor and her backstory, which is really sad, and it adds a whole new lore to the Spencer Mansion. It does a great job. I think it does a good job or a better job developing the characters more. The voice acting's still not the greatest in the world, but it does a better job than the original because the original it's just very cheesy 90s. This one develops Barry's story a little more, and I think it does a good job capturing like the visuals of the mansion. Like, I think it's one of the most beautiful looking games ever made. The pre-rendered backgrounds are phenomenal. To this day, it's still one of the best looking games ever. And it looks like a modern game to this day, and it came out in 2002. Like, that's how good a job they did with the backgrounds. It's insane how good it is, and it's one of the greatest soundtracks in the franchise, if not one of the best soundtracks in horror games ever. Almost every theme song in that game is memorable, but especially the save room theme. It's just it's a wild ride. I mean, you fight giant snake and a giant sharks and bees and stuff like that, giant plants. That's makes Resident Evil unique from like other zombie games, because other zombie games are just zombies. Resident Evil is all about like mutated monsters and bioweapons and stuff. And Resident Evil does a fantastic job. I think it captures the original perfectly, and it adds its own spice to it. And it's just a phenomenal game. It even tries to psych you out a little bit. Like, you'll walk down the hallway with the dogs jump to the window, and you think like they're gonna jump to the window because that's how it was in the original. But it only does. But like, what happens? You walk down the hallway and only the glass breaks a little bit, and then they only break through the window when you come back, and you don't even always have to come back to that hallway anyway. So, cool things like that really add to it. Plus, the addition of the Crimson Heads, where you have to burn the zombie bodies or they come back, really adds a whole level of difficulty to this game. This is definitely arguably the hardest Resident Evil game ever. Because if you don't burn the zombies, they come back as Crimson Heads that run full speed at you with claws, and it does a lot of damage. And I think the enemies do a lot of damage to you, and you have to be. This is the game where you really have to be good at inventory management, or it's gonna be a hard time for you. I would definitely. I don't know. Like, this is a game you might need a guide if you're not familiar with this genre. Basically, this is like the hard mode of survival horror. Especially if you play on the higher difficulties, and the puzzles can be tough at times too, because they can be obscure. But I can speedrun it. I have to practice for a little bit, of course, but it's been a while. But I love watching speedruns of this game. It's one of those games where like when you first play it, it's like, oh my god, this is really hard, and then after a while you play it so much, it's like, I could beat this game in 2 hours. So it's one of those things. But yeah, it's one of the greatest games ever made. Arguably the greatest horror game ever made. And I recommend everybody play it. It's very accessible now. You get it almost every platform, including Switch. So there's no reason not to play it at some point. So just get, as long as you can get over the fixed camera angles. But the tank controls are not an issue because the remasters have modern controls, so it plays very well. All right, so that's Resident Evil Remake. Dory, what's your next game?
Yeah, my next game. So in the spirit of Until Dawn Remake coming out, I was looking through a bunch of lists, and I still love Until Dawn. I only played it once, which I know kind of goes against the choice based kind of thing. But for me, it's like when I make choices, generally I want to stick with them, and I just consider myself like happy with them. Like going back through a game over and over again to get like the best route possible is just not the kind of person I am, generally speaking. But Kim and I both love playing this. I got a lot of the characters killed. It's a really fun game. I haven't played the remake yet. One second. Sorry, I had a cough. I haven't played the remake yet. I don't know if I even will. But I did love the original and would recommend. From what I've heard, the remake keeps pretty much everything that worked from the original. Just gives it a fresh coat of paint and some updated quality of life improvements. But I haven't played it for myself, and October is way too busy for me to focus on a game that I've already beaten before and played before. But I know Seb's been playing it or will play it, so he can chime in on that. But yeah, I definitely recommend this game. It's more accessible than ever, of course, because the remake just came out. But even if you wanted to play the original, I mean, that was on PS4, and I think you can still play it on PS5. Great game. Got Hayden Panettiere, a lot of like well-known actors at the time, which was big for a video game based on horror. Excuse me. And just generally like was well acted. You could care about the characters. The choices were impactful. The story was interesting. It's a classic of the genre for a reason. It's not the best game. But I had a really great time with it back when I first played it a few years ago or so, more like a handful of years ago by now. But yeah, Until Dawn, probably go play the remake at this point because it's 10 years old. So I'm sure the quality of life improvements are more than sorely needed at this point. But yeah, I don't know if you have anything to add there, Seb, but Until Dawn.
Yeah, Until Dawn is a total recommend for everybody to play. First of all, it's one of the best party games. If you have like a Halloween party and you want to have a bunch of friends playing together,
Absolutely.
it's a fantastic game. It basically started the whole genre of like narrative cinematic games like this. Like Heavy Rain and games like Heavy Rain and stuff like did this first, but like in the horror genre, like they basically started its own. Or Supermassive basically did nothing but these kind of games since then. I mean, we got in the Dark Pictures games now and the Quarry and stuff. And yet this is still the best one. I think the Quarry. I think Until Dawn is the best one because the characters are the best and the most memorable. I think the story is the most interesting. I think the whole mystery with the Wendigo is really interesting and stuff. And I think the scares are genuinely cool and good, and the jump scares are they're cheesy at times, but they keep you on edge because you never know when you're gonna get scared. So it's a really fun time, and Until Dawn's one of my favorite PS4 exclusive games, which is now on PC, which I'll talk about later as in the remake. Just I know the reaction has been very mixed to the remake, which we'll talk about, but I don't want to get into it right now. But I think Until Dawn is definitely a must-play game for if you have a PS4 or PS5 because it's just a really fun time, and it's not too long, so like it knows like when to end and everything. And people still talk about it to this day. So the only thing I don't like, I guess, is well for me it was like when I did the get the platinum trophy, I had to do like 2 playthroughs, and like as much as I love the game, I don't like playing these kind of games like 2 or 3 times just because like it feels like it starts to drag. But that's like a minor nitpick just because I don't have to do that. But yeah, it's definitely a recommendation, a great recommendation, and it's always fun like seeing the different story beats too, of course, because you can get everybody killed and the whole game changes, or in my case, I always make sure that keep everybody alive. The fun of the game is blind playthrough, but It's also it's a game you might need a guide for because sometimes you like the decision you make is like very obscure. Like just going right will get somebody killed instead of left, and that can get annoying, I guess. But it's a fantastic game, so it's a great party game. All right, next game for me would be Dead Space. Uh, you can basically say the remake too, because
Yeah, also on my list.
the remake basically replaces the original, I suppose, because
Yes.
first of all, the original Dead Space doesn't run very well on PCs. It's very choppy. So if you're gonna play Dead Space, play the original. I mean, play the remake on PC. Plus, I think the remake's pretty much cheap now, so there's no reason not to play the remake first. I mean, it's a very very uh loyal game to the original. Like it's pretty much the same game, just better in almost every way. It pretty much replaces. It's like Resident Evil remake. It pretty much replaces the original. It first of all, it does everything Resident Evil 4 did, but better. Like it improved on Resident Evil 4's gameplay. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite game of all time, and Dead Space improved on the gameplay. So Resident Evil 4 walked, so Dead Space could run basically. And the monster designs are just phenomenal. The ship environment is just incredible. The atmosphere is top notch. Like, this is definitively one of the greatest games ever for atmosphere. The sound design, oh my god, especially in the remake, is top notch. Like some of the best ever in the industry. The gore, the visuals, top notch. Like this is definitively one of the prettiest looking games ever, and everything about this game is just phenomenal. It plays fantastic. I love how I feel like I think the AI adjusts to your the difficulty adjusts to you how well you're doing. So like you never know what hallway, like there's always, sometimes the game will spawn like a random enemy in the hallway, even the one that you cleared out. So you're always on edge. You never know what's going to attack you at any time. So you're walking down a dark hallway and you can get attacked literally at any moment in the game. I think the story is very interesting as well. You see, I like Dead Space 2 as well, and I recommend that as well. Dead Space 3 I would not recommend. Very much so an action game, and they turned the series into an action game and then closed the studio, which was ridiculous. But Dead Space 1 is purely action survival horror games, and it like I said, it's like Silent Hill or Resident Evil where you have to have inventory management, but I think you get a lot of bullets and stuff. Like I feel like I was always doing well with inventory in that game. So it's kind of like Resident Evil 4, but like in a ship, basically. And yeah, it's one of the greatest games ever made. It's absolutely phenomenal. I would say it's my top 3 greatest survival horror games. If I was telling you like the definitive 3 horror games you have to play, that would be it. Silent Hill 2, Resident Evil Remake, and Dead Space. Like those are like the 3, and they're all different from each other. So those are like the definitive 3 survival horror. Like I'm not talking like horror as a whole, because obviously there's different genres of horror. I'm talking about like survival horror, like specifically with this inventory and item management and all that. I think those are the 3 definitive franchises, or at least games, to play if you're into that genre. Because I think every survival horror fan has played those 3 franchises. I mean, when we think of survival horror, we think of Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and Dead Space. So obviously Dead Space is easy to recommend. I know, Dory, you have it on your list as well. So
yeah, it was actually next. It was actually next.
Oh, cool.
So really good timing. Yeah, I played the original Dead Space when it came out. I loved it then. I played the original again a few years ago. Thought it was still a really great game. Some parts of it didn't really hold up. The asteroid shooting, the space floating in the air. I don't even know.
Yeah, the remake took out like the worst parts.
But the remake fixed most of that. Yeah. I'm not gonna say everything, but it fixed pretty much all of it. Yeah. It's an excellent. I don't have my rating for it up, but it was definitely in my top 10. I'm not sure exactly where, but it was such an excellent game. I had an incredible time with it. It still preserves the atmosphere of the original. It like looks incredible, plays incredible. They even added some stuff for the story. They gave Isaac a voice, which was nice. Really, it just in general, they improved on it, which is more than you really could have wanted for it. So yeah, it's an awesome game. I would agree with you. Definitely one of the top like horror game, like survival horror games that I would recommend. Obviously, it's in this list. But yeah, if I could only recommend a few different games to play if you're a survival horror game, Dead Space got to be up there. You do get a lot of ammo, but especially on the higher difficulties, that's less of an issue. I did find on normal that I almost never ran out of stuff. But I also never play on the harder difficulties because I find Dead Space a very, very stressful game in a good way. It's survival horror, so that's a good thing for me in this context. But yeah, I mean, it's still a very stressful game, and I was not looking to make it any more stressful. So yeah, definitely something up there for me as well.
Yeah, another game I'd recommend is Amnesia: The Dark Descent. Amnesia is very well known, and being like arguably the scariest game ever made. It just messes you psychologically. Like it does fantastic sound design and tricks you into thinking something's there and it's really not. It has that's the whole mechanic of the game. But the part that everybody knows is when you get chased by that monster in the water, right? That's like one of the most well-known levels in a video game. And it is a very stressful horror game, and you're pretty much powerless. It's not like Resident Evil or Silent Hill where you get weapons and fight back, or Dead Space. It's very much so psychological horror that we're like you don't know where anything's at, and all you're going by is the sound design near you. Now, Amnesia has several games in the series, and The Bunker, which came out recently, not too long ago, is definitely another Amnesia game you should play. And it has the same kind of thing where like you're getting chased by a monster, and you don't know where it is, and the whole game is you're just constantly on edge at all times. It is so just be prepared. It's gonna be a very stressful experience, but it's very much worth it. In terms of atmosphere, it's one of the greatest atmospheres of all time. Best sound is one of the best sound designs of all time. So definitely must play. Amnesia is one of the greatest horror games ever, arguably the scariest game ever. A lot of people, it's notoriously stressful for a lot of people. A lot of streamers have played it, of course. It's one of those games. It's quite old, but definitely everybody should play it at least once if you're a horror fan. All right, Dory, what's your next game?
Yeah, my next game, continuing the line of excellence in terms of horror games, is the RE4 make. Resident Evil 4 is my favorite Resident Evil game. I don't think it's that close, honestly, in terms of any other Resident Evil game. Maybe Village comes close, because I thought Village was really great. But I mean, I was very skeptical, to be honest. I was very open about this. I was very skeptical when they announced the remake. I was like, I just played the original. Like, I'm not sure if this is even really necessary. The original still runs really well. It looks pretty decent for the time. But then, I mean, I saw how much they improved the visuals, how they improved the combat. I was like, okay, this looks really good. And then, of course, it was like top 5 game of the year contender for me. So I ended up really, really enjoying myself with it. I honestly would recommend both the original and the remake, but I don't think you can go wrong with either. I think the original has more goofy action hero charm, whereas the remaster tries, in some places at least, or remake, whatever you want to call it, is more of is a little more serious at times. Not always. There's definitely still like, where's everybody going bingo, but there's definitely moments that they took out to make it a little bit more serious, whereas the original is a bit more goofy.
Yeah, it's a direct sequel to Resident Evil 2 remake. Leon, who's original Leon in Resident Evil 2 is very serious, but then they made him a goofy action hero in Resident Evil 4, which I love. That's the Leon I prefer. But this one, it's a direct sequel to Resident Evil 2 remake, and where Leon is like very, very, very serious. He's very heroic, and that it carries it over into Resident Evil 4 remake, where he's less action hero, more so like just a man of action, I guess. he doesn't say the one-liners as much. And then the only times he does is just kind of a callback. It's not meant to be a goofy Arnold Schwarzenegger movie like the
I do love when he
original
says
is.
90 night nights. I mean, that's one of the best moments of the whole game.
Yeah, but if I was recommending a Resident Evil 4 to a new fan, I'd say play the remake. Because I think the original, as much as I think it still holds up, and it's my favorite game of all
Yeah.
time. I beat it 30 times on every platform, so I can say that. Uh, I still think it holds up really well. But if you're more accustomed to like modern third-person shooters, like the Dead Space remake, Last of Us Part 2, you're gonna have a better time with Resident Evil 4 remake because it plays very well. The gameplay was where it was the best part of the game. I thought, like the adding the pairing mechanic to it.
So good.
It's very fluid. The movement is very fluid. It's not. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's very fluid.
Pairing that chainsaw is just one of the coolest things like you'll ever do.
Yeah, there's so many cool clips that people have made. I was watching a video today of someone doing the mercenaries mode, and they got like perfect score, and like all the cool moments. Like you can really become a master at that game. It's a fantastic game. It's one of the greatest remakes of all time. I think the atmosphere is incredible. The visuals are awesome. I have some nitpicks with the voice acting and the characters. I think Sadler and Krauser and Ada are better in the original for me.
Agreed. Yes,
but I still think they're fine. And I think this game. I think this game improved on several areas in Resident Evil 4 that I didn't like as much. To certain elements of Resident Evil 4, like they felt like goofy gameplay moments that didn't really need to be in there. Some of the rooms I think of are like the room where like they shoot fire at you. I just feels really over the top goofy. Or when you get chased by a giant statue, like that didn't make any sense in a Resident Evil universe. But then again, this is the same universe where you fight Wesker in a volcano and shoot a rocket launcher at him. But it is what it is. And I think this game did a great job of like making it a little more grounded in terms of like instead of the statue chasing you, is more like this statue shoots fire at you and you can just blow it up. So that like the things like that I like and appreciate. But it feels like its own game basically. A lot of the stuff feels original. A lot of stuff feels like like the original game. But at the same time, it does a lot of its own things as well, and it's just a fantastic remake. And this is the reason why I don't agree with people saying there's too many remakes or there's issues with remakes. First of all, that's not true. Dory and I have talked about so many new games this year, and barely any of them been remakes. So let's calm that down. First of all, and the second of all, if the remakes are quality, what's the issue? I mean, Resident Evil 4 is 19 years old. So what's the problem with a new fan playing a remake and getting into the series for the first time and really loving it? And that's a lot of people. Resident Evil is a very popular franchise, but there's a lot of people that have gotten into the franchise because of the Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 4 remake. So they're very important for gamers. I have no issues with remakes. The only problem with remakes is like Last of Us Part, like the Last of Us Part 1, for example, where it's like, yeah, like it looked fantastic and it was built from the ground up, and yeah, it's the definitive Last of Us version, but like it's basically the same game because they didn't change the gameplay at all. Not the case in Resident Evil 4 remake. They literally changed the gameplay completely, and it feels like a totally different game. So Resident Evil 4 remake, one of the best games ever. I can't say it's the best. I can never say that it's better than Resident Evil 4 because I'm so in love with Resident Evil 4. So it's like I just can't like arguably it's like I think it's arguably better than or objectively better than Resident Evil 4, the original. Like in a lot of ways, but like I just love the original so much that I can't say it. So in Resident Evil I always divide it by like the old games and the new games. Like I could say Resident Evil 4 is the greatest Resident Evil game of all time, but it's hard to compare it to Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica and things like that just because they're so definitively different. But yeah, if I'm going on a tangent, I just wanted to mention that Resident Evil 4, one of the best games ever made. Now, my next game would be System Shock. System Shock being the precursor to BioShock. System Shock I feel like it's very underrated. And I bet, once again, I would recommend the remake to new gamers, but I think the original still holds up very well, and the second game holds up very well as well. So I'm basically recommending the first and second game. It's similar to Dead Space. It has an amazing atmosphere in space, creepy AI. The antagonist of that game is very memorable, and it does a great job creating an atmosphere on the ship. Like it has like the alien vibe, where it's like, no one can hear you scream in space kind of thing, and that's what System Shock is. It's a horror game in space, which is unique, right? Because a lot of games typically go for like their crazy mental asylum kind of thing, or they go for zombies or ghosts or something. Having like a creepy AI, like a AI trying to kill you, is unique in the gaming genre. There's not many games have been like System Shock, and System Shock is, like I said, it's a spiritual. It's the beginning of, it led to BioShock basically. Dory, have you ever played System Shock at all?
I remember trying the remake, and for some reason it wasn't running well on my laptop. I think this was maybe this wasn't before I got my new one, and it's when I had this one, but for some reason I was having audio issues. I also just personally wasn't having a good time. I was running around, and I just felt like I didn't know where the hell I was going and what I was doing. but I mean, obviously System Shock has this big legacy. There's a lot to it, obviously, with Shodan and the cyberpunk aspects. It's very unique. And obviously it got us BioShock. So that's awesome. But yeah, I couldn't quite get into the remake, and I don't know if that was just because of the hardware I had, or tech issues, or just because I just couldn't. It was tough for me to just get into it. But I didn't jive with it at the time. Maybe at some point I'll go back to it and check it out again, because obviously love cyberpunk, love survival horror, and a lot of the stuff I've seen or heard about the game in terms of just concept alone is very appealing to me. So I was surprised when it didn't click.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of the granddaddies of survival horror, even though it's sometimes, like you said, underappreciated and not thought of like that, because it's not Resident Evil or Silent Hill or one of those other big franchises.
Well, I think also because I think it's only on PC.
Right.
Until the remake came out to consoles finally, I think.
Yes, it did. Yep.
And so I guess it kind of it's one of those franchises that became obscure, got replaced by BioShock, and then oh yeah, it's a great '90s series, and then kind of went to obscurity. Now, is your last game going to be The Last of Us, or part 1 or 2?
It's going to be Last of Us Part 2. Yeah,
okay.
I know this is a big surprise.
So I want to hit on Part 1 and Part 2. So let's just combine the two of them together.
Sure.
So you talk about Part 2.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I really don't think you could go wrong with either game. I only picked Part 2 just because the gameplay is better, really, and I don't think that's deniable. I love The Last of Us Part 1, and I think the survival horror elements, especially the survival elements, are a little more front and center than they are in the second one. But I will still say the clickers, the stalkers, the Rat King especially, it all makes for a very memorable survival horror experience. I think people forget that The Last of Us is survival horror because it focuses so heavily on story and it focuses so heavily on the characters. But they are survival horror games, in their gameplay, despite having a very kind of rich story that you can obviously pick at and think about and stuff like that. You don't always get that with horror games, and especially not as grounded as The Last of Us tends to be, as grounded as you can get with a fungi cordyceps virus that takes over the world, right? But I recommend the second one specifically because the gameplay is so fluid. You could go back and play the first one, but I do think it's a little janky at times. And I don't think it's so janky that it's bad or anything like that, but it definitely stands out. It hasn't stood up to the test of time. I really wish when they did the remaster, they would have given it the sequels, updated the graphics, I guess, but really more so what they needed to focus on was the gameplay, and the fact that they didn't is a shame. But yeah, the sequel is, I think, survival horror excellence personified, basically. It has a lot of really great fights, even when you're fighting against humans and not against zombies, so to speak. The bosses are really challenging. It's just a fun game to play. Just kind of. I did run back through it a couple times, but it does get tough to run back through because of the story and because of like how graphic and gory the game is, which is kind of the point, right?
Yeah.
It's supposed to kind of elicit feelings in you in terms of the characters you're killing.
Yeah.
So it worked for me. Eventually, I couldn't go back and play it because I love the game a lot, but it's not necessarily the most replayable in that sense.
Yeah. The Last of Us Part 1 was a game changer. There was already cinematic games, but that game really showed that like games can be like Hollywood quality of voice acting and writing and visuals and cinematography, and music and things like that. Last of Us, I mean, what needs to be said? It's one of the most well-known franchises in gaming. Everybody knows Joel and Ellie, so I don't have to go into like how good those characters are portrayed. Part 1 has just like masterful moments. Like there are legitimately Oscar-worthy moments like of acting. The relationship between Joe and Ellie are just top-notch. But since this is about horror games, right? Last of Us is very much so a survival horror game because you have inventory management, you have to find resources, you craft things, and like when I say things, I mean like weapons and Molotovs and things like that. And it's a zombie game, right? They're not technically zombies, I suppose, because I guess they're alive. Did they ever even use the word zombies in Last of Us? I don't think so.
I don't think they do. I think they're notably one of those media franchises that's for some reason treat the word like a swear word. I don't know why.
I'm not even sure they exist in the franchise. I don't know if it's like like Resident.
I mean, there's no reference to George A. Romero. There's no reference to classic zombie text. They just don't reference it at all. It's very biological, very scientific.
Yeah. Because
which is kind of a shame, but whatever.
Yeah, like The Walking Dead, like there's no such thing as zombies in their universe. So like zombies appearing or like what the hell is going on? And then like Resident Evil, like they call them zombies because they're similar to the zombie lore that's real, like real life. So I don't recall Last of Us ever mentioning them as zombies, but either way, they're zombies and the clickers and all that. It has a lot of awesome survival horror moments. Like when I first played Last of Us when I was in college, it was a very intense, hard game. Like I found, I think it's easier now because I know how to play it and I know where everything is and all that. But when I first played, that game was really hard and intimidating. Like anytime there's a clicker in the room, like your heart's pumping because they get you, you die in one hit. And yeah, it was very stressful. But I think part 2 obviously is a way better stepping stone on terms of gameplay. It's way better in terms of gameplay. Like I think Last of Us Part 2 is arguably the greatest third-person shooter of all time in terms of gameplay. I have issues with the story, but not like other people who like absolutely hate it. I think it's a really great. I just think I just have issues with the pacing here and there. But I like the first game's story better. But I still love The Last of Us Part 2 a lot. It was my game of the year in 2020, and I beat it 2 times. I beat it multiple times, but I got the platinum 2 times on PS4 and PS5, and I will play it again when it comes to PC. And yeah, it deserved to be game of the year. It's one of the greatest games. Everything about it is awesome. Cinematography, acting, gameplay, of course, a lot of great moments. Like I said, there's some moments of pacing I hate, like when there's a lot of walking and talking. I don't like that. Some chapters they could have took out, but overall, it is a fantastic game. So I basically put them together. If you're gonna play part 1, you gotta play part 2. It's like The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2. I don't think there was a Game of the Year award in 2013, so I don't know if it won it. Maybe it was. I think there was, right? Didn't it win Game of the Year 2013? I don't know. But either way.
I don't remember either. I believe one or both of them won Game of the Year.
Right. Either way, Godfather. It's like The Godfather Part 1 and 2 of gaming. It's one of those definitive series, I think, and I would totally recommend it. You have to play it at least once if you're a horror fan. So, all right. So that's that. Um, let's talk about what we've been playing. Now, this won't be quite as long. I'm guessing maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, because the game I have 3 games I'm talking about, but it's gonna be brief because they're not exactly long games, and then they're also some of them are well known and remakes or old games. The first one that I beat was Callisto Protocol. I beat it on PS5 when it came out. I had mixed feelings about it, and I beat it again on ultra settings on PC. So obviously it looks way better on PC, but although it's still gorgeous on PS5. But my mixed feelings are still there. I still think, in terms of the atmosphere and the visuals, it looks fantastic. But in the gameplay, it still lacks. Like I just don't like the melee focus of the game. It feels like the game not meant to be melee focused. They should just did the Dead Space route and made it mostly gun based. The camera is still not your best friend. This game still has way too many crawling through vents, which are just disguised loading screens, and it just gets way too redundant with the climbing through vents, climbing through wall,
I will
squeeze through
I will
wall.
say with the combat, I think. Well, I haven't played it yet. It's on my Game Pass list, but I really think they wanted to. I'm not saying that this was a good idea, but I think they really want to differentiate themselves between themselves and Dead Space. So that's why I think they made it melee based. But I agree with you. I don't really think it was a good idea. But I think they were so concerned internally with how they would be compared to Dead Space that they were like, oh well, we got to have something that makes us really stand out. So let's make it way more melee based, which I mean, by most accounts, didn't work very well.
Which is funny because this game still feels like a Dead Space game. Like it feels like Dead Space, like 1.5 or a side game or something. The atmosphere and the visuals and everything it's just Dead Space. Which is not a bad thing, obviously, because we just praised the hell out of Dead Space, and the visuals of this game looks incredible. I just think the story in this game is kind of it basically it builds up to a sequel. Basically, it's like it's one story in a big world that was hyping up and building up to at the end. And I don't really care for the final boss. I don't really care for the villain, which is played by Sam Witwer. And it's still like to me a 7 out of 10 game overall. Like I think people are starting to like it a little more now. Because I think the biggest problem with that game was the performance issues, but I think a lot of them have been largely patched. And I know the PC version was really bad when it first came out. And when I played it, I had pretty much zero issues. It was flawless. There was like one glitch I had that I had to like restart my chapter to get by, but other than that, it was a pretty much flawless experience on ultra settings, and I had a high frame rate the entire time. So it played fantastic in terms of that. It's just like the little things that I said this on the last podcast when we talked about this originally, that like it's a game that where like a sequel can fix the mistakes of this one and really shine and it'd be a fantastic game. Like it sets the foundation really good, really well. And a sequel, if they just fix the camera and fix the gameplay like elements and get away from the janky melee combat and fix that up a little bit and stop with the stupid vents every 5 seconds. It feels like a sequel can really kick ass. Like there is a foundation here that's really good. The storyline, the story didn't really capture me, but I can see a really good story here, like an idea that could work. So I'm curious. I don't know if they're gonna do a sequel because I don't know if this game was a success or not. Top of my head, I feel like it wasn't what they wanted. The reviews were definitely mixed, but I definitely think I definitely want to play a sequel. I'm gonna play the DLC this month as well. I haven't played that yet. I got it. The DLC came with it. I got it on Steam for like $8. So what a steal! And it's on Game Pass. So there's no reason not to play this. It was on PS Plus as well, like back a while ago. So this game is very accessible now. It's very cheap. There's absolutely if you're a survival horror fan, I don't see why you should not get this game. Like even if it's not great, it's only a 7 to 8 hour game. So like why not experience it? If you like Dead Space, definitely play this. and you might not like it as much as Dead Space, but you're not gonna. I don't feel like you're gonna like finish the game and be like, wow, that was a waste of my time. I feel like you're gonna be happy with it, like overall. Like you're not gonna, it's not gonna be on your best list ever games, but it's like, oh, I had a good time with it. I think it's like Hellblade, right? Where it's like, I enjoyed my time, my 5 hours, 7 hours with it, and I'm ready to move on. But it was still, I had a good time.
Yeah, that's exactly how I felt about Senua's Sacrifice. I was like, I had a good time. I'm ready to move on. I didn't feel like I wasted my time, but I don't feel like this ain't making my top 10 list either. That's how I felt.
Yep. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to rotate, so that way we're not talking for 45 minutes each, back and forth.
Right.
It will feel better if we rotate. So, Dory, what have you been playing as well?
So I only have 2 games, so this is going to get awkward at one point. But I beat Dead Rising, and I've been playing Visions of Mana. So I'll start with Dead Rising. I do not like the game. I have concluded. I do not make this conclusion lightly. I loved the game when I was younger. I just don't think that it's grown up with me in terms of my enjoyment of it. I got about 10 hours out of it, which I think is respectable for how much I spent. I think the problem for me, was a lot of it was gameplay. I just, moment to moment gameplay, I just felt was still really janky and clunky, not super fun. I know there's charm to that. I know there's defenders of that. That's fine. If you don't mind it, that's cool. For me, it took me out of it a lot. I used this example last week. I'm going to use it again. I would get on a motorcycle. I'd be having a great time mowing down zombies. And 0.2 seconds later, I'd bump against the smallest thing and fall off and lose health. And it's like, that's just really the whole game in a nutshell. For me personally, I would have fun with it for a few good seconds mowing down zombies. And suddenly I'd be whiffing every strike. I'd be getting hit. Food would be nowhere nearby, yada, yada. I just don't really like the health system in general. I think that's one of my other big issues. I understand why it works the way it does. And I don't think it's like illogical necessarily. I just wish there were more food stores besides the grocery store and besides like the food court. I just feel like sometimes when you're in that one section where the food court's not there and the grocery store isn't there, you're just kind of SOL if you need more food, especially if you're in the middle of a boss fight. By the end of it, I just focused on the main story because I didn't really care for a lot of the boss fights. I felt like they were frustrating. They weren't terrible or anything. I'm not saying the game's horrible or anything, right? This is like a 6 out of 10 for me. So I'm not saying like the game is irredeemable. It has no good qualities at all. Like I just said, I had fun with it at times. But there's just too many times where I got frustrated. Towards the end, especially with the bomb mission, it felt like that was very frustrating. I actually eventually like had to go back and restart the mission. And then I got a bunch of food. I got a bunch of katanas, and I discovered from a guide that you can actually take one of the delivery vans. And I didn't know that before, but I was trying to get one of the ones that had the bomb in it, and I took the bomb out, and I was like, I can't get in the van. What are they talking about? So it turned out that there was a delivery van right next to one of the vehicles that you can see early on in like Section A or something like that. And so I did that, and I ended up first trying it. Like, Carlos didn't even get in my way. I didn't get stopped once. Like, the delivery van was so bulky, I should say, hulking and bulky, that I was never really stopped. So I did it in one shot. So I did a whole bunch of prep work for nothing, which was frustrating. And then what sucked even more, I got like the good ending, right? Quote unquote, ending A, where Frank gets, this is a 20-year-old game, so I have no problem talking about like the ending and stuff. The helicopter's coming, and then of course somehow there's a zombie in the helicopter, and he bites the driver. The driver crashes, and then Frank's like, well, fuck my life. And I'm like, yeah, that's real. Like, that's a good zombie ending. Like, it's not a happy ending, but I understand. Like, I don't like the ending, but I get it. But then it's like, oh, wait, the game's not over. It's time for overtime mode. And I'm like, all right, I guess so. Sure, I'm here. I might as well. So then I had to fight a bunch of special forces guys. And, like, I understand they're supposed to be tough, right? They're an extra mode. This is all optional. But the fact that they can just like wombo combo you with those machine guns, and you can't do anything. Like if you get two special forces guys shooting at you at the same time, you're just done. And I get it, Frank's an everyman. He's a Hugh Jackman type, whatever the body type. I mean, he's just like, but he's just fucking done. Like the one guy with the machine gun's bad enough because usually you get stun locked for like a good few seconds and you lose like half your health. But two of them, you're just dead, like instantly dead, because like you can't do anything. You can't move. Obviously, you can't like fucking catch the bullets or block or dodge or anything. So it sucks. And then you go on like this big quest because you've gotten infected. And it's just a fetch quest over and over again, like 3 times in a row. Now, luckily, I did look up a guide of how to get the queens, because you're supposed to get like a bunch of. So luckily, there's one that spawns right outside of the little Carlos's headquarters or whatever. So I just did that, and that was fine. But I did that, and then what happened after that? Oh, and so I'm like, okay, the game's like, oh, you got to really gear up for this last mission. I was like, okay, gonna get some katanas. I'll get some guns. I'll get some like milk and orange juice. I'm fucking ready for this last mission. I get it. I get into the tunnel with the anti-zombie fragrance. I didn't know that I was supposed to hold her hand. So I spend the first half of it like, why isn't this working? Like they didn't explain that you're supposed to hold her hand, which is kind of on me. I should have realized. So I don't really blame the game there. I should have realized that you're supposed to like hold her hand so that the fragrance covers both of you. But I thought she made enough for both of them. I don't know, whatever. So anyway, I'm mowing down the zombies, and then eventually I'm just pushing by them with the help of the anti-zombie fragrance. I get to the end, and they take all your weapons, and they take all of your health, and I'm just like, what the fuck did I do all this prep for? And so they put you in this vehicle, and you're fighting this other vehicle, and in a very like unsatisfying anticlimactic boss fight where you're like shooting at this tank, and I'm like, oh, okay, like I'm gonna be able to drive the tank after this. Nope, you don't get to drive the tank either. You just get to fight this really, really bland villain who is just evil because he's evil, who comes out of nowhere, is like, I was there at the fucking cattle experiments in whatever the village was. And it took me like 2 tries and I beat him. But I was so pissed. I didn't have my katanas. I didn't have my guns. I didn't have my orange juice. I did all that prep. I mean, it didn't take me a ton of time, but it was still annoying. I had to fight special forces. I had to like pick them off just to get into the grocery store. So like it took me a little bit of footwork. I would have appreciated being able to keep that shit. But the game's like, nope, we got something better for you. Your bare fucking hands. I'm like, why? So yeah, I was not happy by the end of the game. I didn't really like this game overall. There are some moments I really like. There's some characters I think are cool. There's a lot of concepts here that I love. I love the general concept of the game. Going absolutely apeshit on a bunch of zombies in a mall sounds incredible. I love movies like that. And obviously I love plenty of zombie games. We've been talking about zombie games today. The Last of Us and Resident Evil, just to name a couple. But yeah, this game didn't click for me. It's probably... Now I say this, the next thing I say should be taken with a grain of salt. I'm very selective about the games I pick. I use reviews, and I like talk to Seb, and I listen to like what people are saying online on Twitter and wherever else. And like I make sure like my money's gonna be well spent. And like a lot of the reviews I saw were like 7s, 8s. And I did like the original, like I said. So this is one of those rare missteps where I didn't actually like a game. Usually I do. Usually a game's like a good like 7 or an 8 or even higher for me. This game's like a 6. So I guess relatively speaking, this is like the worst game I played all year. That doesn't mean it's a horrible game. No one should enjoy it. No one will ever like it. But for me personally, I didn't have a very good time overall. Like I said, there are definitely some moments I had fun on the motorcycle. That fucking track that plays outside with the convicts is a banger. I forget what it's called, but it's really good. Every time I went outside into the park, I was looking forward to it because you get to listen to that song. It's like literally one of the best parts of the game. Like I said last week, I think the plot is good, and I think it's interesting. I think it's actually good, decent social commentary on like government cover-ups and experiments and like foreign affairs and consumer. Obviously, there's the mall and zombies and consumerism, right? That's a constant in zombies. I think that's all done pretty well. I think the voice acting is decent, and I think the writing is generally pretty good too.
Yeah.
It's really just the combat and the gameplay for me that it often falls by the wayside.
Yeah. I haven't played it yet, but I do have it downloaded, and I plan on playing it at some point this month, and I'll let you know about it. But I know Dead Rising is not one of the most popular Capcom series, and people have issues with it, so it's not. I'm sure your opinion is not unpopular. I feel like a lot of people probably are not going to click with this for a lot of reasons. I think this game is purely for the people that played the original and loved the original, or at least have nostalgia for it, kind of thing. Whereas,
right, which is funny because that's me. I had nostalgia for it. I was like, I'm day one on this, and I was excited for it. The reviews look promising, but for me, it just didn't click.
My question is like, we all know, like, if you're all like my age, we all know Dead Rising, right? Like, it's that zombie game with the mall and everything. But how many people actually beat it? That's my question. You know what I mean?
That I'm unsure. I didn't beat it when I was younger. I can tell you that. I don't remember.
I didn't either.
Fighting the guy I don't remember fighting the guy in the meat market. I don't remember fighting the guy on top of the tank. I definitely didn't do that either.
Yeah.
I don't even remember the bombs. I remember fighting the clown with the chainsaws.
Yeah.
I remember running around the mall and having a good time and like fighting zombies, but I couldn't tell you if I beat the story at all.
I didn't beat the original until this year in the summertime.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Anyway, speaking of mediocre games, Lollipop Chainsaw, not the best game. Not saying that. I mean that. It is a very mid game, average, not even average, below average game. It's one of those games where it's like, it doesn't take itself seriously, and it's only like 5 hours. So it's like, I don't want to like go like, oh my god, don't play this, like, because you might have fun with it for like 5 hours. Because I don't know, I think the big problem with it is the gameplay loop is just so repetitive. You just keep fighting zombies after zombies after zombies, and it's the same like buttons, and the skill boosts are not that much different. So it feels like you're doing the same thing over and over again. Every level, while they feel different, they're like they look different. I mean, it's like the same thing over and over and over and over again. So this game gets boring. But being 5 hours long and you play it here and there, I think you'll have a good time with it. It's just one of those games where it's like, it's so over the top goofy and it's very hypersexualized. For me personally, like I said, I don't get offended by things, so it doesn't really bother me. I don't think there's anything like super problematic in this game. There's nothing beyond like, there's nothing crazy bad in this game like that would be like, oh my god, I can't believe you did that. But it's definitely some moments where it's like, it's outdated, I guess. I don't want to say outdated, but it's for it's for weirdos, Japanese weirdos, basically. It knows that though, and just has fun with it. Like, it knows it's a weird game for Japanese weirdos that like hypersexualize this teenage girl, although she's like 18, but still a teenage girl. And like being like 31 now, she's a child to me. I feel like that's creepy at this point, but it pushes it, but not like too extreme. It's not pornographic or obscene like that. It's nothing like that, but it just hypersexualizes a girl a bit. The best way I could just compare this game to is the Deadpool game. If you ever play the Deadpool game where it's like it knows it's a stupid game and has fun with it, that's this game. Now, I don't think this game is quite as good as the Deadpool game, because I think the Deadpool game, because I think Deadpool is just a more fun character than Juliet is. But but it just has that like whole vibe to it, like the early 2010 PS3 era. Like, let's just make a fun Devil May Cry beat 'em up game where you just like get scores for killing zombies and go from point A to point B. That's all this game really is. I think Juliet is fine as a character. I don't think she's anything memorable. She has a very sarcastic personality, and she's a fun cheerleader that like fights zombies, and like she has a sensei that teaches her how to be a zombie hunter. That's what she is. She's a zombie hunter, and that's fun. And her boyfriend Nick, I think he's the best part of the game. Like he's really funny. He's a likable character. He's a head because he gets bit by a zombie, and so she uses magic to cut his head off and keep him alive. And he's like on the back of her butt, like like Mimir is for Kratos. And he just
that was my first thought too, Mimir.
Yeah, and he's played by Michael Rosenbaum, I believe, who's Lex Luthor in Smallville. He's obviously he's one of my favorite actors. I really enjoy his podcast, and he's just I think Nick has like a lot of fun commentary because he's just like a teenage boy that's just like confused, like he's just a head, and he has a lot of great banter with her, and he kind of just thrown in a tough situation. But yeah, this is the definition of a 5 out of 10 kind of game. But like if you just turn your brain off and have fun for 5 hours, I think you'll be fine with it. Like don't get this game for full price or anything. I would get it for like if you get this game for like $8, you'll have a good time with it. Like it's not a great game. It's not a good game, but it's definitely something you'll have fun with for 5 hours. That's pretty much my review. So. Yeah, it's the remaster. Even though they cleaned it up a lot, and it looks pretty good at times. It very much so looks like a cheap PS3 game. Like they cleaned it looks like they cleaned it up. Like it looks the visuals like the colors pop but like for something about that generation, that like time period in the early 2010s, that PS3 era, like the animation is still very janky and just doesn't age well as much, I think, and you can see it in this game. So
makes sense.
Yeah. All right, so that's that. So you've been playing Visions of Mana.
Hell yeah! We're gonna start talking about good games, everybody.
Yep.
Visions of Mana.
Well, Until Dawn. I don't know about good game, but we'll talk about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about Visions of Mana at least.
Yeah.
So Visions of Mana, Seb's already played it, and now I'm playing it. I'm having a hell of a time with it. It's not like a perfect game. It's not going to be, I think it'll be, I don't think it'll make my top 5, but I think it'll be very close. I love it a lot. It's got a lot of really great characters. I love Karina. I love Julie. Just a lot of these characters are very likable. Like we were talking about a week or two ago with Seb, when he was talking about it, I think their dialogue is really funny. Morley is just a cool character. I
like Julie the best.
Yeah, Julie's very funny. Julie, when you're in the dark town or whatever, and you're with that scholar who's really fucking annoying, I forget his name. But when you're at one point when you're in the dungeon and you're going through a portal, Julie's like very sarcastically, "Oh no, he's falling behind." And it made me laugh out loud because I didn't expect it. I love Julie. I love how sarcastic he is. He's a very dry character. He is actually an old man, but he looks like, of course, anime. He looks like a kid. And him and Karina and their interactions with each other are so fucking funny.
Yeah.
Just anytime him and Karina talk is very good. I will say it's a little jarring that Karina sounds like a Southern belle who came out of the 1930s for some reason.
And no one else,
and her parents.
Yeah.
What?
And nobody else around her talks.
And
like
nobody else, right? And nobody else from her town. Her parents don't sound like it. Like, at least if you're going for that aesthetic, like, make it consistent. But I mean, ultimately, I don't give a shit. I think it's very fun. It makes her stand out more. Is it weird? Yes, obviously it's weird and it stands out. But I don't mind it. I've already gotten used to it. I will say I don't usually like royalty. And I'm, usually on the side of the French when it comes to royalty, historically speaking. But if you get it, you get it. But I mean, Palomena, I'm not exactly sure. So I'm a little confused how old she's supposed to be because she speaks very regally, but she's supposedly young, but she talks like she's in her 20s or something. I don't know, but she's a very cute character. I do think she's attractive. But at the same time, I'm like, I've got that classic anime issue of like, I don't know how old she's supposed to be, but she's old enough to rule a country. So, you would think she's in her 20s or something, but who fucking knows?
Yeah,
Her brother's the prince, and he's like a child, and he's ruling the country while she's gone. So that's no measure of her age. So I don't know.
yeah. I was very confused because the beginning they kind of sexualize her, and she wears like a very revealing outfit.
Right.
I don't know what it.
And then I was into it until I was like, wait, how old is she?
Yeah, I feel like they're all teenagers.
Right, yeah. Like Val says he's 17, and then I was like, oh man, maybe Palomena's like 17.
I figured they were all 17, and then Julier's like whatever.
Julier's like thousands of years old, but he looks like a child.
She looks like a child.
Yeah. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not into Palomena anymore. So the classic anime trope of like you can't tell how old people are, and then you realize that like they're much younger than you think they are. Like, oh, well, okay, I'm not liking them anymore. But anyway, so yeah, she's a really cool character though. I'm very bland with my classes. I mean, I pretty much keep everybody like they've been assigned. I mean, Julie is the sage or whatever. Morley is the assassin or Nightblade or whatever class. I pretty much keep everybody as they were assigned to begin with. Not very progressive of me, I know. But you know, I'm having a really good time with it. I don't really feel the need to mix up my classes. I do like the ability seed stuff where you get a lot of different, you know, extra attacks or moves or certain traits are buffed, and you can switch those all between different characters to mix up gameplay. So I'm having a really good time with that. Morley's just a powerhouse. So I always have him in my group, and I always have Val in my group. So besides that, I switch around. So like that slot's always kind of free. Right now I'm using Julie just to see how good his healing capabilities are. I haven't run into any big difficulty spikes yet, although I presume that's about to happen given where I am in the game. I'm about to face like 4 different bosses, and then there's a dungeon and a final boss. So I have about 10 hours left. I will say once those difficulty spikes happen, I've had excuse me, sorry. I have had a couple of circumstances where I thought the design of the combat was a little unwieldy. Like there's one part in a dungeon where you're not exactly fighting the boss, you're fighting like he's just stomping and the rocks are coming from the ceiling, but you're also fighting like a bunch of smaller enemies. And then I don't know if you know which boss I'm talking. It's the one with the frog and the princess. That was really frustrating because there's one part where there's like a whole bunch of those purple type enemies, the nemesis or whatever. Then they all start shouting stars. No, but they like all of them at once like start using their special moves, and like I could not even keep up with that. But generally speaking, I have not encountered any like major difficulty spikes. I presume that's coming up. As soon as that does happen, immediately putting the game back to easy or story or something. Because I'm not stars. Because I'm not putting up with that shit. I don't have enough time or energy to do that. I'll give a given boss fight a few tries. I will say I want to talk about a couple more positive things, but I will also say there's a story shift. I'll try to be vague because Visions of Mana is still a new game. There's a story shift about halfway through the game that I don't like, and Seb knows exactly what I'm talking about because we've been talking about it in DMs. But there's a shift in terms of who, in terms of some of the main characters in the plot. And I just don't think it's necessary. It just felt like they were doing that just to make things feel more epic, quote unquote epic, in all capital letters. The story before that felt very grounded, and the characters involved felt very sympathetic. But they kind of do the Final Fantasy 16 mistake of like going from a grounded philosophical lens to like a more like celestial lens of like I'm going against the gods and this is all about like the future of existence itself. So they just make it a lot less. And like this is a story thousands of years in the making and whatever else. It just feels like they had really cool ideas for a villain and then just didn't commit to it. I don't know. It's not like a deal breaker. Doesn't make me hate the game or anything. It's just something I wish they wouldn't have gone back on. I wish they would have just done the light and dark dungeon and maybe like a couple of bosses and then gone to that villain instead. Like the game shouldn't be 30 hours. I feel like it's more like a 20, 25 hour game. But yeah, Seb, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I think my biggest problem with this game was it had an interesting story element to it, and then they ruined it with like a pretty generic villain. I think the story itself just gets very predictable and generic, and that ruins it.
It's a shame because before that, I really had sympathy for the antagonist. I wouldn't even necessarily call him a straight up villain because I understand
he's like neutral.
Villain,
he's neutral.
Hero.
He's neutral. Like.
Yeah, I mean, like he does awful things, but I understand why. I mean, the world of Visions of Mana is fucking terrible. Like you have to sacrifice people every 4 years. Like this is Cabin in the Woods times 4. Like you have to sacrifice everybody. Spoilers for Cabin in the Woods. But you have to sacrifice everybody like every 4 years, and it barely does anything. And if you don't do it, like this curse befalls you. Like it sucks. Like this world objectively, it fucking sucks.
It's like that story, the lottery, when everybody wants it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I will say objectively, while this world does suck, man, it's beautiful. And actually, I could have said that about our real life, but I digress. This game is fucking gorgeous. I cannot talk about this game without expletives because it is just incredible how good they got it. The art style is phenomenal. I will say sometimes the animations and lip flapping don't exactly convey the emotional anguish that the characters are supposedly going through, but that's a minor gripe. Generally speaking, the background is just incredible. The atmosphere is awesome. The vibes are immaculate. This is just a pretty game to play. I always feel relaxed and really like happy when I'm playing this game. I love this game overall. Like I said, it's probably going to be, I think it's going to be like number 6 or somewhere around there. I mean, unless it takes some other kind of nosedive for me in the last like 5-10 hours. I think the combat is really fun. It's not very complicated, but that's okay. I don't need it to be super complicated. It gets the job done. There's every now and then where I feel like the combat's a little floaty, and sometimes I'm missing my targets, and I feel like I have to move a little more than I think. Or sometimes the lock-on doesn't exactly work. I think these are all problems Seb mentioned a couple weeks ago too. But they're not huge issues. And generally speaking, the combat isn't so unforgiving that any of the things I just mentioned are going to get you killed. So I don't think it's a huge deal. Generally, this game's wonderful. The music's incredible. Voice acting's very good. The writing's very good. The graphics are incredible. Obviously, I have some disagreements with the way the story is going in the late game, middle to late game. But I still do overall think the writing for the characters and the dialogue is very strong. And like I said, all these characters are very likable. So yes, I definitely recommend this game to anybody who likes action RPGs. I'm very excited to finish it and then start Silent Hill 2. The vibes are going to go from very happy and joyful to incredibly, incredibly fucked up. So excited to see how that goes. But yeah, I'm having a really great time with it. Honestly, I would even put this in my top 5 if they hadn't done that whole switcheroo thing halfway through. I think they just wanted this game to be more quote unquote epic, and they wanted it to be longer. I think honestly they could have ended this game at 20 hours, 20 to 30 hours, and had a better game for it. I think this is an excellent 20-hour game that's stuck in a really great or could have been, stuck in a really great like 30-hour game. Because I'm just about 20 hours now, and it'll probably take me another 10 hours. So that's basically like your average Kingdom Hearts game, 1, 2, and 3 specifically. I think even Birth by Sleep. Most Kingdom Hearts games take about 25 to 30 hours.
It took me it took me 35 hours to beat.
Okay. A lot of the side quests I'm not doing. I'm pretty much gunning for the main quest. I don't think the side quests are bad, but I do think they're repetitive and uninteresting. I guess that makes them bad, but they don't like bother me. They don't actively drag down the game, and I don't really pay much attention to them at this point. I was doing them to start with.
Yeah.
But I very quickly realized, okay, these are all like, get this item, get these ingredients or fight these monsters. It's literally it's literally nothing else. That's like the only 3 types of missions. It just kind of gets boring. And eventually, like, I was just really taken by the story, and I was like, that's what I want to focus on. So yeah, that's Visions of Mana. It's a really great game. I'm excited to finish it and move on to something else, but I love it a lot. I'm very bummed that these devs are not going to be doing anything else. But I hope the people involved ultimately can make something else, and hopefully Mana will keep going as a series because I really enjoy this.
Yeah, Vision Mans is a great game. It's gonna be my top 10 games of the year probably. I have issues with the difficulty spikes and some of the story elements, but overall it was a great game. And one of the best, my favorite part of the game is the visuals. The colors really pop in that game, just amazing. All right, so the last game we're gonna talk about is Until Dawn Remake, which just came out yesterday. Now, how you feel about this game strongly depends if you played the original or not, because most of the negative opinions I've seen of this game are people that have played this game. If you've never played Until Dawn, you're not gonna have the same issues as much. It still has the issues of the original game as well, but the biggest criticisms of this game have been largely what they've changed, and I agree with some of it for sure. For example, if you play Until Dawn, it has a very strong blue palette. Like, everything is very blue. And this game brightens everything up. Whereas, like, where a scene that feels like it's supposed to be at night, feels like it's in the daytime because it's so bright. They gave it like an orange tint to it for whatever reason. I don't know why. I think they wanted to make I guess they figure the graphics are going to look better and more detailed and better lighting. So they brightened it up, but I think they brightened up too much. And that affects the atmosphere of the game. Also, I guess I've seen, it's already been spoiled for me, but I already know the endings. I platinumed it back in the day, in 2015. But apparently they added a new ending, which is cool for Josh, and then I know people criticize like how the characters look at the end of the game and how just the certain details about them. It's like all the complaints I'm seeing are mainly about like just the changes of how characters look. But I feel like maybe because people love the original characters so much, they're attached to them and they just don't like the changes. But I think overall the biggest criticism is that it's pointless. It's a pointless remake. They don't change anything up really. There's like small things here and there, but they don't really change anything up. And it's the same game. So that's why I said in the beginning of my review that this game largely depends if you play the original or not. If you never played this, then you're gonna have a really great time, and you're not gonna think, oh yeah, this is a remake. Because the visuals are absolutely fantastic, and they did an amazing job remaking it. It's just that like if you're so used to the blue palette and the characters and how they look originally, it's gonna bother you. And of course, another big criticism has been on PC is having to log in the PSN on Steam, which a lot of people are review bombing or at least complaining about it and giving it bad reviews because of that, which is going to be a common problem with every PlayStation game as long as Sony keeps pushing this. I'm in the camp where it doesn't bother me because I just log into my account, but I totally understand the issues with it, and I don't agree with it. I don't, because what happens is that people like in different countries that can't do this get locked out of the game, and I don't see the point of forcing people to do that for a single player game. I can understand like Helldivers or something, which also I don't agree with, but I can understand that more. But Until Dawn's a single player game, so I just don't get it. But overall, I think Until Dawn is it's a good game. If you like these kind of cinematic horror games, and we talked about it already, the original. If you've never played it before, then there's nothing wrong with buying this remake. The remake really serves no purpose, and it is a waste of money for people that have already played it. I don't mind buying it because I haven't played Until Dawn since 2015, so it's been 9 years. So it feels more fresh to me. But if if you're a new player, then I can recommend it. If you really want to play a horror game, but these games go on sale, so I would wait for a sale personally. But if you really want to play something really cool for October, then yeah, get it. If you've already played this game before and you know it very well and you know a lot about it, like don't get this game. It's a waste of money. It's like The Last of Us Part 1, I guess. And I bought both of them. And people call me a bad gamer. I don't really give a shit. I buy what I want to buy. And I had a fun with Last of Us Part 1 despite the issues. But in this case, I got Until Dawn on sale on those Steam Key websites and stuff. So that's the advantage of PC gaming, is that I can get them for cheaper. But yeah, I could have easily waited for a sale. If this came out like in July, then yeah, I would have waited. But since it came out in October and I was in the mood for some horror, why not? I love Until Dawn. So yeah, it was an easy sale for me. So overall, my whole point is this game is very subjective, and depending on who's going into this. And that's why the opinions are so mixed, because I've seen people that are really enjoying their time with it, and then I've seen people that absolutely despise this game. So it's just one of those things. It strongly depends on where you're at and what camp you're in. So
yeah, I'm glad I didn't buy it then, because it sounds like it would have been a waste of my money.
Yeah, but I have it, so you can play it. So
yeah, well, saying the quiet part out loud, but yes.
Yeah,
I love the original, and that was a great game, but I had no interest in replaying this. Or I mean, they could have introduced a Jesus mode. I don't even know what that means, but like they could have like done any millions of things, and I would have been like, I still don't really care. I played the original. Yeah. I really enjoyed it, but I don't need to replay. It was the same thing with The Last of Us Part 1. I didn't need to replay it. I had already played it like 2 or 3 times at that point, including the PS4 remastered version. And I love The Last of Us Part 1. You wouldn't be able to catch me like stop talking about it. But like, I don't need to replay it again, and especially not for like 50, $60, whatever it was.
Yeah.
Same thing with this.
70.
This was like 70. How much was this? This one was like
60.
60? Yeah, I mean, I've already beaten the game, and there's so many new games coming out. That's the other part with like people complaining about remakes and remasters. It's like if you don't want to play a remaster, just don't buy it. Like, just play the new games that are coming out. I mean, you got Visions of Mana, you've got ReFantazio's coming out, Sparking Zero. I mean, like, there's plenty of new games that are coming. That's not even counting all the indie games like Kill Knight, which just came out. There's so much good shit coming out. It's just not worth. I don't think personally it's worth anybody who's already played this game. But yeah, does it look nice at least? Like the character models and the atmosphere.
The
and
visuals,
stuff?
the visuals in this game are fantastic. Like the remake genuinely does a great job.
Good.
Everything looks like phenomenal. Like that. There's performance issues that people are having. That also that can depend on your computer as well. But
right.
But PS5, there's definitely performance issues. it definitely should be cleaned up, and it definitely feels like a game you should wait for a patch to fix some things up. But it's hard to say because it's always tricky with game reviews, because typically game journalists get their game like a month in advance or a week, 2 weeks in advance, and they play the pre-patch version that gets patched on day one, and it doesn't line up to what the reviews are saying. That's what happened in like Days Gone, I feel like, where like they could like, it was almost unplayable when it first came out for the game journalist, and then on actual launch day it was like they patched a lot of things. But that's very dependent. Yeah, I think overall this game, if you never played Until Dawn, then yes, you should definitely get this. If you're on PC and you're looking for a cool horror game for Steam or something, like obviously you can get it on PS4 for like $9, $8 to play the original. It just depends on how much you really care about having like a fantastic cinematic, like fantastic graphics and lighting and stuff. So it's the definitive. I won't even say it's the definitive version of it because people don't like the certain elements, but it's one of those things where, like, I think Sony's just trying to target like a new audience that hasn't played this before. That was the whole idea of putting it on PC and PS5, I think. And that's pretty much what it comes down to. The movie just finished filming recently, and the ending, from what I gather, hints at a sequel now. So maybe there's gonna be Until Dawn 2. They added
I did hear some rumors about that.
So yeah, so my review of this game is just largely depends of where you're coming from. But in terms of the game itself, because I haven't even mentioned that yet, I'll go fast. It's a cinematic game, and you make decisions that make the characters either live or die, and it's a very quick time event heavy narrative game. So if you don't mind walking around, like having a really beautiful cinematic game where it's like you're in a location, you walk around the location, you pick up files, you go from point A to point B, and then something happens and it's a quick time event. Either you have to hit the buttons correctly, and if you don't, you die, and the character dies permanently, and that's the whole game, and the character is dead for us to play through. And so you'll get achievements for either having everybody die or having everybody survive. But either way, everybody's playthrough is going to be different. I always recommend playing blindly first and then doing a guide. But if you want to use a guide first, then yeah, it will come in handy to save you time. And if you really care about having platinum trophies and stuff like that, then yeah, I would follow a guide, because you're gonna have to play this game like 4 or 5 times if you end up doing a blind playthrough. Because one mistake can get a character killed. So to me, it's like a 7 out of 10 overall. I would not recommend it for people who have already beaten it and they want to spend $60. But if in a year from now or whatever, and this game was like $20, $15 on sale, and it's October, then yeah, I feel like it would be patched by then.
Yeah,
It would be cheaper. That's when I'll recommend it. So I would wait for this game for like a year or so, and then buy it, and then you'll have a great time for $15. So that's the case with all the Supermassive games. I feel like I've said the same thing about every Dark Pictures game and every in the Quarry. Pretty much all their games, I've said the same thing. So, yeah. So that's our show. Thanks for watching. Tomorrow, Silent Hill 2 comes out if you have the deluxe version. So I'll be playing that tonight at midnight, and I'll have it beat by next Saturday, and then we'll talk about it. And also Dragon Ball Sparking Zero comes out, so it's gonna be a very heavy show. The thumbnail is gonna be Silent Hill, but the week after is gonna be very Dragon Ball heavy, because I'm gonna put more. I'm gonna focus on Silent Hill first, because I want to get that out of the way. Because Dragon Ball is where I'm gonna put like 100 hours into. So Silent Hill I can beat in like, I don't know. Well, apparently it's a 15.
It's gonna be it's like a 15-hour game.
Yeah, it's like
Resident. Like a 15-hour game.
I heard it's slightly longer than Resident Evil 4 remake, so we'll see. Yeah. I can't promise it. But my point is, in 2 weeks, Dragon Ball I can talk about Dragon Ball way more in depth. I'll be playing every mode and stuff. So I'll talk about Dragon Ball next week. It's just gonna be a very surface level impressions, and then I'll deep dive into it after. And then I want to do a Silent Hill 2 spoiler review as well. Spoiler cast where we really deep dive, because Silent Hill 2 story has so much depth to it.
Yeah, and remember, this will be my first time going through any Silent Hill game. I mean, unless you count PT. So certainly any Silent Hill numbered game.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to. I'll be finishing Visions of Mana before I start Silent Hill 2. But once I'm done with Visions of Mana and I find some time and Seb's not playing, I'll probably be playing Silent Hill 2. I'm probably gonna get Dragon Ball on my PS5, just because I always play it on consoles. I can't really imagine playing it on my PC with an Xbox controller. Although I could play it with my PlayStation controller if I really wanted to. But yeah. So I'm excited for both those games. Like you said, it'll be a heavy week next week. So I'm excited for both those. And I'll also be talking about the finale of Visions of Mana. So whatever that looks like.
All right. Thanks for watching. Happy Halloween. Happy October. And peace. Take care, guys.